Hello, everybody. Really nice to be here. Thank you so much, Ellie, for the lovely introduction. Really nice to see a few familiar faces and names. Really happy to be talking to you this evening. Apologize first and foremost for it just being me. Normally, I think it was promoted as myself and my business partner, Mimi. Mimi's 8 months pregnant and she was meant to finish work tomorrow for maternity leave, but last night she just was one step too far, so she actually had to finish today. So I apologise on her behalf for not being here. But you've got me. I'll try and make it as fun and engaging as possible, even though it is not the most, riveting subject. It is extremely important and very useful. So, without further ado, actually, before I start, one thing I wanted to ask, because I know there's quite a variety of photographers at different levels and different stages in their photography career. Could you give me a thumbs up in the chat if you've already been commissioned, you're already a working commissioned photographer, just so I can kind of gauge how many of you are at that stage in your journey? That would be super helpful. And I'll keep an eye on the chat, but I will keep going. Okay, so a little bit about us. The agenda, we're going to start with talking about who we are. Then we're going to talk about probably the most important thing, or one of the most important things, which is your day rate. We're going to talk about usage. It'll be quite a basic on usage. I'll try and keep it as simple as possible, although it's quite a complicated subject. We will then go into how licensing imagery works, and that is licensing your existing imagery, not licensing work that's being shot. So that's sort of archival licensing. How to organize that archive, how to negotiate and price your work, when it comes to licensing agreements, and tracking usage and expiry. So we have quite a lot to get through. There's a little arrow bottom left, which we've put there so you can track the progress of the talk. Also helpful for me because I can make sure I'm not going too fast or too slow. So I think the plan is to go through all this, and then at the end there'll be a Q&A. Feel free to fire off any questions you've got in the chat, and Ellie's going to keep an eye on that, and we can answer them at the end. Equally, I am very happy to answer questions if you've got them mid-chat. Please feel free to do that. Happy for it to be an open conversation, but also aware that it's sometimes easier just to put it in the chat. So without further ado, a little bit about Darklight. Oh, there was a GIF there. That's some work we did for Hublot. Okay, a little bit about us. So we are a team of art buyers and producers. We are based between London and Amsterdam. That is our team all there. What we do, we cover art buying, which is essentially commissioning, image usage and licensing, creative production, visual identity, and content creation, because everyone needs content creation these days. So we've spent many years working across all sides of the photo and footage licensing, both with brands and also with photographers. We'll come to that in a little bit. We've handled everything from negotiating buyouts and extending campaign usage to licensing archival imagery and footage and building image libraries for global use. Here's some work that we've done in the past year or two. These are all relatively big ones that we've worked on. I think there's a little. That was for Hublot watch company. This is a real mixture of commissioning. Some of these we just commissioned the photographer and the production was done by someone else. Others we produced the shoots and did the sort of everything all the way through. So this is the flip side of what we do. So as well as working for brands and ad agencies, we are really passionate about photographers, which is why we love working with the Photography Foundation and other organizations similar, because we have always, Mimi and I worked back in the day in an ad agency together, and we saw so many photographers. And it's just kind of grown and grown and grown our sort of network, and we do consultations and workshops and all sorts of photographers. We now, as Ellie said, have a platform called Darklight Pro, which I think some of you here are on. So we basically serve as an ad hoc advisory team. We can help you with your portfolio and we essentially help you support your photography business. We've been commissioning photography and managing artists and running a little creative company for a really long time. So we are essentially an unbiased help for you. So whereas agents can sometimes point you in a specific direction, or you ask your friends about your photography and they're like, oh my God, it's great. Oh my God, it's lovely, brilliant, well done. Sometimes actually you just need someone who's going to be really honest about your work and really help you. So that's what we're there to do. You will see throughout this presentation a little QR code. If you want more information on Darklight Pro, how to join the platform, it's essentially a chat group. We run events and talks. We do in-person meetups. And yeah, there's loads of great stuff going on. So check that out. Yeah, as you'll see, the QR codes are all the way through. That's some work we did for Hennessy. Very quick flick through. So let's get stuck in. First and foremost, know your day rate. With your day rate, it's one of three parts, I would say, to how you should be quoting for clients. There's the base usage rate, then there is your day rate, then there is your usage. So the day rate is how you basically your fee to turn up and shoot for the day and what that fee is. It really helps to work out how to. People often say, I don't know how much to charge. Should I be charging 500? Should I be charging 5,000? You have to be a little bit considerate of who your client is. Obviously, if you're working for a big global brand for a big ad campaign, you want to put your day rate up a little bit. You might be working for a small brand, local company down the road, in which case it's going to be a bit lower. However, what you should know is what your base cost is. So taking into account your studio rent, all your expenses, taxes, equipment, software, etc. So think about how much you need and want to get, and then add all that on top. And there's a little maths formula at the bottom. So your desired salary, your business expenses, and divide it by your billable days, and then you've got your day rate. Essentially, it's sort of a very basic way to work it out. But as with everything I'm going to go through today, pretty much it's flexible. None of this is set in stone, so it is flexible. So negotiating and pricing. The value of negotiating and pricing depends on a few things. It depends on the usage, as we discussed, and that can really vary widely. We'll get to usage in a little bit. You can also use, I say market research here, but it's mainly trying to work out what other people in the similar sort of realm to you are getting paid. And that's quite a difficult thing to do. I appreciate no one wants to talk about fees. However, if you've got mates in the industry, if you're assisting someone, if you can have an honest conversation with them about fees or get a mentor. Also, we're always here at the end of the chat to talk about rates if you're unsure. But try and garner a little bit of like, where do I sit? You know, if this photographer is getting paid this much to do this kind of campaign, where should I be there? Another thing that you can do is offer bundles for better value. So if a brand would like to buy 20 images instead of the 5 that you were initially planned to shoot for them, then obviously you can do a bit of a deal, a bundle offer, as it were. So on to usage. So as I said, there's no one size fits all when it comes to usage. There are formulas. There's a usage calculator. There are ways that you can work out usage. However, there's a few different things to take into account. So let's get started. What is usage? Oh, I need to move this chat thing. Hang on a minute, I've lost my cursor. Here we go. Okay, what is usage? Usage is an agreement between the photographer and the client indicating how, when, and where the images are going to be used. The photographer, and this is really important, will always retain copyright to the imagery unless it's included in the initial negotiations, which some clients are asking more and more, that they want to fully outright own the copyright to the images. we would strongly, strongly advise that you turn down those offers. You should always retain the copyright to your images because it is your way of making money. Essentially, the agreement between you and the client is them paying to use your images for the use that they want, be that a billboard or, a local magazine. But if you retain the copyright, you retain control over what happens to your images. Ooh, there we go. So, what is the purpose of usage? It actually is. It's a really important part of um, the whole quoting process. So it helps you keep ownership of your work. Um, it means that it's very fair. You get fairly paid for what it is. Like I said, it varies really massively. Whether it's just a UK usage, whether it's a global usage, it means that you're getting paid fairly for where your images are being seen. It keeps control of your images, where they're being used. As I said, you want to know if your image is on a billboard on the other side of the world, or if it's going to be plastered all over social media. So they're always your images. Someone else might be paying to use them, but remember that, like, at the end of the day, it's really, really important that you know how they're being used. And the final thing is that it really upholds industry standards. It does keep it fair, and it means that really, no matter where you are in the industry, what you're shooting, you know that everyone is charging usage. It can fluctuate, it can vary, but everyone should be charging usage. And if you find photographers who aren't charging usage, have a quiet word with them because it's really, really important for the industry as a whole. So, why do we need it? It should be on every single job you do, paid or unpaid, little asterisks there. We do not advocate anyone working for free, but just to be super clear, you should know where your images are being used and for how long they're being used. I have a little anecdote that's maybe a third-hand bit of information. So it might be a little bit of Chinese whispers, but I did hear of a photographer who shot a campaign and the usage was 1 year, UK only, outdoor advertising. And 10 years later, he was in China and he saw his image on a billboard for that campaign. And he called the client and said, "You owe me 10 years worth of usage, global usage for this." So that's why it's really, really important to keep a track of your usage and know where it's being used. I expect he bought himself a nice little house off the back of that. So, okay. So, um, I can't see the full screen. Hang on a minute. Oh, sorry, we're going up a little bit. So what do all these things mean? Media channels, territory, and duration. So this is what your base usage should be. You should base your usage on. So media channels, we'll come to that in a little bit, exactly what that means. But essentially it means whether it's being used online, whether it's being used in billboards, whether it's being used in press, etc. So those are your media channel outlets, plus the territory. So whether it's being used in the UK, whether it's being used in Australasia, wherever, and the duration. Do they want it for 6 months? Do they want it for a year? Do they want it for 10 years? Hopefully they say 10 years. Sorry if this is a little clunky. I can't see my cursor, so I don't know where I'm clicking. Okay, decoding the jargon. One of the things that we find photographers most get confused on is the jargon. There's a lot of words when it comes to usage and licensing. And it can become very confusing. And what's important about this is that clients often don't know some of this stuff too. So it's really important that you know it so you can guide them. It means you're much more in control of the situation. So we've sort of selected these 4 things as the most important words that you need to understand. However, we do have on Darklight Pro a usage glossary of terms, which you can download and use as you need. So in there, yeah, you'll find everything from what does above the line mean to what does DOOH mean, etc. So BUR, media channels, exclusivity, and in perpetuity. How many of you know what all of those mean? In the meantime, we'll go on to the next slide. I have to say, the base usage rate confused me for years because it's not your day rate and it's not your usage. So where does it come in to this whole scenario? Your base usage rate is basically a baseline, literally, that you can apply all the factors that determine the rest of your usage cost. So the base usage rate is not something that you charge the client, but it does form you normally put it on an estimate so the client can see that that is your base usage rate. It's normally the same as your day rate, not always, but it tends to be around the same as your day rate. You use it essentially to build the usage on, and a good example actually, if someone commissions you to do a shoot, you have your day rate that they can use to add on the usage afterwards. So you go, okay, let's say your base rate is your day rate is £1,000. And from that, you're like, right, and then I'm going to add usage on, and you work out roughly where that's going to sit. And they go, okay, we want those images for a year. Fine, all sorted in your usage, and you've got your day rate, nice, neat, and tidy. In a year's time, they come back to you and they say, actually, we want to extend the usage and we want to change it, and we want it to be used for a bigger territory or a smaller territory. You then don't have a day rate to base that off because you're not shooting then. It's been shot a year ago. And it's just a real like solid way of coming back to the beginning, going, okay, I'm going to base what you want now off my base usage rate. Hopefully that makes sense. I know it's a little bit complicated. So media channels, there's a lot of different ones. They come in at different acronyms, nuances. There's so many. BTL, OOH. A fun story. When I very first started working in advertising as an intern and I saw OOH, I thought it was a typo, and I was like admin assistant, and I went up to someone, I was like, haha, very funny, ooh. And they were like, no, it means out of home. And I went red like a little beetroot. I was like, oh, of course it does. Yeah, I knew that. It's just joking. 48 sheet, etc. So there's loads of different terminologies here. It's very important that you understand these with your clients so you can determine a fair usage fee. And again, like I said before, it's the more you know about this stuff, the more you can control the conversation with the client, and you can advise them and be in the driver's seat rather than them saying, yeah, I want all this usage and I want it for 48 sheets and da da. And you're like, oh, I don't really know what that means. So the more you can kind of understand it yourself, the better it is for you, really. There is, for example, a huge difference between paid social and organic social. So paid social, you would get paid a lot more for because that has a much wider reach than organic social, which is essentially someone posting it on their own channels. Paid social is ads. So things like that are really small details, but important to know. Again, we have this usage glossary of terms, so feel free to go and have a look at those. Exclusivity. This is a lovely job we did for Corona. Exclusivity is essentially when when an image gets used by a client exclusively for them. So you will retain copyright of the image, as we said before, and the usage acts as the agreed licensing fee. But exclusivity essentially means that it's not allowed to be used by any other client. So while you retain copyright and they say they want to use it for the next year, they are the only ones who are allowed to use it for that year. Once the usage ends, then it's fair game. You can do what you want with it. But there's a contract in place, and there might be some sort of, we don't want this image used by anyone else in this 1 year, and that's what exclusivity means. I hope that made sense. In perpetuity. Oh God, I hate this. It's the worst. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard the word in perpetuity, and it normally is followed by all media. This is the client being really cheeky and saying they want the images forever, forever. Um, and they normally say, "Oh, we've got, X amount of money. We've got enough money to have it for." Let's say the next 5 years, but actually, can we make it in perpetuity for the same amount? And the answer should be absolutely not, because in perpetuity does mean that they can use the image forever. Key point here, they will almost never need that image forever. In fact, it's unlikely that they'll need it more than 5 years. Most brands, they change their look and feel, they change their messaging, they change their client, the name sometimes. So actually, the chances of them needing a specific image forever is really, really unlikely. So I would always push back really hard on in perpetuity unless they're paying you a lot of money. They do that because a lot of brands, especially the really big ones, Unilever being a famous example, Unilever, as you can imagine, have vast quantities of images, millions and millions across all of their different brands. They don't want the worry, concern of having to keep track of all those images and not knowing who it belongs to, when it's going to expire, when they need to renew it. So they often say, we just want to own it forever because it's easier and it saves legal issues, like the 10-year example I gave you before. It stops that happening from the client point of view. But I would say if you can push back on it, push back on it, because they should really pay you quite a lot of money if they want to use it forever. It is increasingly difficult to push back on someone like Unilever when you are a photographer. I'm very well aware of that. But we must do what we can. So, as I said before, there is definitely there are usage calculators out there. There are charts out there to help you work out the usage, but there is no one size fits all. And we at Darklight are quite what's the right word? We believe that there's a lot of other factors that need to be taken into account when it comes to usage. Um, you can do the numbers, you can work it all out, but actually, who's the client? Do you even like them? Do you want to work with them again? Maybe you need to reduce it a little bit to keep them on board. Is there potential for future licensing of images? Do you think they're going to roll this over into another 5 years? In which case you want to do a deal. How much do you want the job? There are some jobs that come along that are just, they're cash money jobs. You take the money, you don't show it on your website. It's just bread and butter. That's fine. Everyone does those jobs. But if it's a really beautiful creative that's going to elevate your portfolio and you're really excited about it, then obviously you want to negotiate the best price and get the job. And are they likely to recommission you? If so, then it's probably worth knocking off a bit of money at this end so you get them on board for the next job. So they're just some important things to take into account, that it's not, we get so many photographers. If I had a pound for every photographer who sent me, how much usage should I charge for this? And they just give me, you know, we're shooting 10 images and it's in a studio and it's this, that, and the other. I'm like, I need more context. Like, who's the client? Do you like them? Do you want to work with them again? Like, it's not as easy, unfortunately. I wish it was. There was just a chart, but actually, I think these things are really important to take into account, because essentially you want to be working. Okay, how does licensing work? So we're moving on to phase two. That was all about usage. It was all about your day rates. This section of the presentation is about licensing. And when we say licensing, we're talking about licensing pre-existing images. So images that you have sitting on an archive, sorry, on a hard drive somewhere, that are probably not doing very much. You can make money from those images. So let me just check my notes, see where we're at. Okay. So how does licensing work? The best way to describe licensing your existing shots is it's like renting out your work for a set purpose and time, similarly to, usage for a shoot you're doing. Um, you keep the ownership, the clients pay to use it. Same as before, you own the copyright. The clients are paying to use your image for a set amount of time. The only difference here is that you're not shooting it for them, it's something you already own. So it's a legal agreement with very clear terms around the usage. And it protects your rights while generating an income, a passive income at that, hopefully. So we do a lot of work with licensing for brands. We actually, any of you have any travel imagery, we've just on the Darklight Instagram put a huge travel brief out for a big global brand looking for images of particular locations around the world. So I would encourage you, in fact, love you all to have a look at that and see if you've got anything that might fit. That's a really good example of licensing. So you might take a look at this brief that we've just put up and go, oh, actually, I was in New York a little while ago. I do actually happen to have those shots. Send them in to someone like us or any of the other commissioning libraries, and we'll take a look. And if it fits the brief and the client likes it, then they'll pay you for it, which is really nice. And you've done nothing except send some images from a hard drive. So that's why it's a nice passive income. Here are some jobs we worked on over the last few years, which are all licensing briefs. None of these were shot for the brand. They were all pre-existing images that the photographers had, or footage as well, actually. And I should say, we do quite a lot of footage searches too. So with these, even the Corona one, that was a big out of home global campaign for Corona. And they wanted this sort of vintage look to it. And for one reason or another, I think probably timings, they couldn't shoot it. So we did a huge search for them to try and find the exact images that they wanted. And similarly with the Google one at the bottom there, the motion piece, that was a lot of footage they needed. And they were like, wait, we can't go out to all these different places and shoot all this stuff. There is, I will say, a bit of pushback on licensing versus shooting, because there is this argument that we want to be pushing to get the shoots rather than why didn't Corona go and shoot those themselves? We'd rather people are shooting. Obviously, we want people to be shooting. However, if there's a way to make a passive income, and by the way, we will always push for clients to shoot. If they ask for advice, we will always say it's much better to shoot. But there's a reality here that actually a lot of brands can't afford it, or they don't have time, or there's lots of other factors. And if we can make you guys some money from images or footage that you've got lying around, then I'd rather do that than not at all. So different types of licenses. These are the three main ones when it comes to licensing existing work. Rights managed, which means like really strict license terms. So they'll say what location it's being used, similarly to your usage before, the location, the duration, and all other usage information, territory, etc. And they'll say that this image is being used for this amount of time. And once that license is up, again, the image goes back to you and you can do what you want with it. It's out of license. Royalty free rights managed also means that no one else can use it for that same, often with rights managed, there'll be a clause which says, for example, if it's being used for Corona, it can't be used for any other drinks brand, maybe, but it's not exclusive. They don't have exclusive ownership over it. Royalty free is a one-time fee, tends to be a much smaller fee involved in that, and a very broad usage rights. They can kind of use it across multiple things. But they have no, they can't sort of say, okay, right, we don't want anyone else using it. It has to be a lot broader. And then the exclusive is that they're the only ones who can use that image for that set amount of time. And yeah, industry sector only. So protecting your work. A licensing agreement. So for example, the brief we put out, if one of your images was used for that, we would make sure that there was a contract in place between you and the client. And that contract would define exactly where and how long the client could use that image and also how much they'd pay. And the fees vary a lot. And it is all, you can always say no to the offer on the table with these because, you know, it's your images at the end of the day. It's not like you've shot it and then you go, no, I don't want you to use it. It doesn't work like that with existing images. Essentially, you can go, actually, that's not enough money. And it has happened to us a couple of times. We've had a few editorial clients who are famed for not paying very much money. And they were like, oh, I want to use this image. Is that okay? And the photographer was like, no, that's not worth it for me. I'm not going to do that for 100 quid or whatever it was. So you're always welcome to turn it down, but it is a passive income essentially. So, right, sorry, protecting your work. It protects your intellectual property. It ensures fair pay and sets clear usage boundaries. Without one, your work is vulnerable to misuse or underpayment. So, as before, it's really important to have that written down and really clear. And again, you should know exactly where your image is being used. Before it's used, both parties agree on the terms and sign a contract, and then the client pays the licensing fee. We've had some really great licensing fees. There's a photographer on the Darklight Pro network, actually. Don't know what it is about her work. There's loads of really beautiful work on there, but she does seem to get a lot of work through, and yeah, she's made a nice little income on hers. I think her average payout has been £1,000 per image. So that's a nice little addition to your income. So, what do you put on a licensing agreement? And there's the QR code here because we do have a licensing agreement that's downloadable on the Pro platform. So all these things are really important to have in that agreement. And also, I would say, actually, overall, whether you're talking about a shoot or whether you're talking about licensing, when you send a quote over to a client, always have the most information you can. Definitely all the usage that has been agreed. And I would have terms and conditions on the bottom of your estimate too. We do also have some terms and conditions. I think they went up last week on the website. So feel free to have a look at those. But yeah, make sure with the amount of photographers we come across who send over estimates and they don't have terms and conditions on the bottom, it's really, really important to have that. It protects you basically, especially as I said, there are massive brands out there. And if you're working for these big companies, they can really squash you. Basically, you're one person and they're a big corporation. You don't want to end up arguing with them. So, terms and conditions just really protect you. So, licensing agreement, make sure you have the image description. Even like a little thumbnail of which image it is really good. So, there's no mix up. We did have a client recently wanted to license. It was an image that the photographer had shot for them, but they'd bought about 60 images from this particular photographer. And they came back to us and said, oh, there was one image they wanted to use for a different usage, and they didn't attach the image or the image number. They just said, there's an image, it looks kind of like this, and we want to license it for a separate usage. And we were like, can we see the image just so it's super clear here? Because what you don't want is like, oh, it was the one with the shoe, it was the one with the this, that, and the other. The photographer will know which one it is. The photographer did not know which one it was, and it's just really important to make sure that there's no grey lines here. So, image description, usage rights, the territory, the duration, the fee, the terms and conditions, all super important. Make sure that is all on there. Okay, so one of the things we often hear from photographers is, oh, but to organize my archive to even make my images licensable is I've got like 20 hard drives that go back 10 years. How do I know like what's on what? It's not worth me even spending a day looking through these to try and work out what's on them. What we would encourage you to do is to use some of these tools. I'm going to be honest, this was Mimi Slide. I'm not sure what some of these are myself. But the digital asset management tools, I'm sure you all know Lightroom, probably Capture One. Well, they're the two I know. I don't know Photo Mechanic or Pixie but you guys probably do. So those are really useful tools to help you sort out your archive. They can, yeah, categorize everything really neatly for you. There is also AI tagging and organization helpers, after shoot, iMatch, and Milio photos. Um, I can't talk too much on this slide because I don't know what most of them are, but feel free to screenshot that and have a little look into them. Ooh. Oh, wait, we're going back. I'm really sorry. I can't see where my cursor is, so it's very hard to see where I'm clicking. Okay, I think this might be our final slide. So tracking your usage and expiry. So maintaining records of your licenses. This goes also for your photo shoots. This isn't just about the licensing, but maintaining records of your licenses and expiration dates is super important. It helps photographers manage renewals and prevent unauthorized use once the license ends. This is also a really great way to make more money because clients often, and I air quote here, forget that the usage is about to end for an image, or it might be that the person who sorted it with you has left the company, and they, it just gets lost in big companies. So if you can keep track of them, again, it's about you having control of your images. It might just be a spreadsheet you keep track of them on, with the dates that they expire, and then you just send a friendly little reminder to the client to go, hey, just to let you know that image you licensed or these images you licensed, they're about to expire next month. Do you want to renew them? Or is there any other usage you'd like to add to them? So it's quite a good way of, because it's often a little reminder, and they're like, oh, actually, yeah, we used it in a campaign last week. So can we actually extend that for another 6 months, for another year? So again, the more organized you are, the more control you have, and the more money you can make, basically. So there's automated tools like Remindax. Again, this is Mimi's slide, so I don't know what that is. Can be very helpful for reminders and efficient tracking. And then there are other tools such as Google Calendar, Airtable, Notion, ChatGPT, and community forums. I don't know how ChatGPT helps you in this case. Maybe it is that it can create a spreadsheet for you. Something along those lines, I would imagine. So that is about tracking usage and expiry. And I think that's the last slide.
Thank you so much, Sarah. This is Ellie. Just to say a big thank you again for your presentation and for offering such a detailed and comprehensive breakdown of usage and licensing, and particularly for highlighting the importance of intellectual property, which is really, really valuable for, especially for emerging creatives, but also for all photographers. We would like to invite you all to add your questions on the chat, and I will read each one of them to Sarah so that we can start addressing them. So feel free to type your questions on the chat and I'll just start reading through them.
I'm also very aware that that was quite a lot of information. I hope it all made sense. We did try and make it as clear as possible, but it's not the sexiest subject to talk about, and also can be quite complicated depending on, like I said, all those different factors. So hopefully that was clear. And also, while you're thinking of questions, if you have any, we're always here for photographers. So we do a drop-in and a coffee morning on our platform, so you can literally just come and chat online to us like this and ask any questions. We also do consultations and that sort of stuff. So yeah, if you have any thoughts or worries or questions, you can use us for that.
Awesome. Sarah, the first question from Charlotte reads, do you have any advice for someone starting up? How do you find clients? Would you ever do any free shots?
Good question. I would try not to do free shoots, because once a client, even if they're, a small client, you don't want people getting used to having work for free. So even if you're charging a small fee, charge something, I would say. How to start getting clients? I would say start small. I'm not sure what it is that you shoot, but if it's products, then maybe go to some local shops and ask if you can shoot products. If it's fashion, then go and speak to some local companies, smaller companies, and say, hey, one of the things that we do often suggest, actually, which is a bit of a halfway house between doing test shoots and getting commissions, is actually asking people if you can use their products in your shots, and if they like the shots, then they can buy them. So we suggest you maybe do like a one pager. Don't give too much away because they might be like, oh, that's a nice idea. We'll take that and do it ourselves. But if you ask them, say, here's my little one pager. This is what I'm would love to do with your product. Would you be up for sending this through to me? If so, this is what I'm going to do with them. And if you like them, then maybe we can talk about, you buying them and using them for your socials or whatever. So that's quite a good little way to start shooting. Yeah, and just keep shooting, even if it's like going out at the weekend. You don't need to do big shoots. They don't need to be big setups. Just take your camera and shoot stuff and keep doing it. And I will say this that I say to everyone, passion and enthusiasm goes a long way. So just show people how much you care, show people how much you love what you're doing. As a commissioner, I tell you, it is extremely, extremely infectious to have someone who's just like absolutely buzzing to shoot something for you. So those are my top tips.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Charlotte. Next question is from Kate. How would you use an image you shot of a model to be licensed? Does the model or modeling agency need to sign something?
So when you shoot anything with a person in it, you should always get a model release form for that usage. So they don't need to, the model agency, they don't necessarily need to be approved by the client as such. Nothing needs to happen there. So the responsibility of the models is on you, not the client. So if the model agency or the model finds that their image is being used on a billboard, that will come back to you, not to the client, essentially. So it's your job to make sure that the model is fine with that. So any people you shoot, and I would suggest also a big point on the licensing, which we didn't mention, if you're shooting people, even if it's on holiday or whatever, and you've got some people in the shots, see if you can get a model release form. And there's an app, a really easy app where you can keep everything neatly filed away and get people's approval to be in shots. I think we've got a model release form on Darklight Pro as well, actually. But yes, really important. Always get the model release to sign something. Even if you don't know what the images are being used for, you can at least have their details and say, I think these are probably going to be used for X. I'll let you know if that changes. If you've got their contact details, you can call them and ask them for, approval. But make sure you've got their details.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Kate. Next question is from Mark. To license previous work, would you have to remove trademarks?
Good question. It depends what it is. It depends how big it is. When you say trademarks, do you mean like logos and stuff? Yeah, it would depend. I would say majority of the time, yes, it's better to remove trademarks for sure. If it's not a competitor brand, if you're shooting for a food brand and they're wearing a Nike jumper, maybe it doesn't matter. So I would say remove them if you can, absolutely. But yeah, it depends what it's being used for.
Thank you, Sarah. Next question from Fanny. Could you talk a bit more about Darklight Pro? Do you put briefs there for both new work and licensing? I'm thinking about your example of the woman who earns a passive income from your platform. How does that work?
Okay, so Darklight Pro is a platform. It actually started off as a WhatsApp group, which got so big we actually couldn't handle it anymore. It started off with in COVID, we had a few photographers we were doing consults for, and we ended up answering very similar questions for them all, and they all some of them knew each other, and we said, hey, do you fancy all being on a WhatsApp group? It's COVID, everyone needs a friend. And you have questions, not only do you have us to answer them, but actually you've got each other as well. That grew from about 10 people to 600 people at the end of last year. And as you can imagine, having 600 photographers on a WhatsApp group got a little bit noisy. So we set up Darklight Pro. It's an online platform. There is a subscription fee, which we are probably going to change because there's currently two levels. One's £6 a month, one is £30 a month, I think. But I think we're going to meet in the middle actually and make everything available to everyone for that fee, but that is TBC. So once you join Darklight Pro, you have lots of other photographers on there. There's a main chat group where you can talk about whatever you want. Yes, we do put briefs on there. We put quite a lot of licensing briefs on there. And we also, if we're looking for photographers, we might, a specific photographer, we might also put that on there. What else do we have on there? Yeah, all our templates we have on there. And we do have some discount offers from partner brands. So there's loads going on there. And we do have, we got headline talk next week by Emily Keegan. I don't know if you know Emily Keegan. She is the most epic picture editor. She has a very awesome Instagram account where she looks into lots of mainly political images and works out why the image of Donald Trump has been shot. And she picks out these amazing details that we wouldn't normally see. Anyway, she's doing a big headline talk next week on failure and what that means in 2025. We also have a great photographer called Hanina doing a huddle, which is basically we ask people in our community to talk about a subject or a topic that they are excited about, and they tend to be smaller, friendly little groups, just get together. So there's loads happening, basically. If you want more information, I'm sure you can. I'll put Ellie. Can you put my email
Yes.
on the chat, and we can. Yeah,
Hap-
drop me an email. That's totally fine. I can give you more information.
Happy to add that, Sarah, and I'll add some useful links and the link to Emily's talk so that you can all have a look. Next question is from Ollie. It is about usage for socials. I think the question is, could you share a rough idea of what would be a good amount of quoting for social usage? Um, and the breakdown would be for 6 months, 12 months, and 18 months.
So these are the questions which are really tricky because it is not a one size fits all.
Mhm.
Ollie, drop me an email and we can talk about this because I'm really bad at doing things like this on the spot. And I need to have a think about it. No idea how to quote for usage of social. I think it was social US only. Do you know if it was paid social or if it was drop me an email. We can discuss this or a WhatsApp or something. And I can help you work it out for sure.
We
But I've got more
have
questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Oli. We have a few minutes. Next question is, how do I protect my work online? I work for big artists, and many times I see randomly my pictures being used in online magazines and other pages profiles without crediting or pay. And I don't necessarily post my work with watermarks.
Oh God, that's awful. I'm sorry. I don't think putting a watermark on your work helps these days because AI can actually remove it very easily. And also I think it tends to cheapen the work a little bit if you've got a watermark on it. You want the images to be clean and clear. I think the only thing you can do, I'm sorry to say, is put slightly low res images. So if anyone tries to use them, then they're not really high res enough for print or um, yeah, but that's very difficult if they're being used online. Um, First of all, get in touch with all of them and tell them that they owe you money, I would say, or remove the images straight away. Um, yeah, you can't really put once your work is online, it's online. There's no protecting it, and that is unfortunately, excuse my language, the shit thing about being a creative these days happens all the time. I would just try and keep track of where images are being used, and I'm sure I mean, as much as AI is part of the problem, it could also help you here to try and track down, use a reverse image search, for example tool and see where your images are being used. Because yeah, and then try and get some money for them or tell them they need to remove them. But I'm afraid that is all you can do, really.
Thank you, Sarah. The next question from David is, do you ever bundle a selection of images together and charge a one-off license to cover a whole batch, or are you always aiming to license per image?
Good question. You can do a whole batch. However, what I would say is if you do a license per image, then if the client decides further down the line that that example that I said earlier, where they wanted a different license for one image, it's much easier to work out. Um, if you give them a batch quote on a batch of images and they say, oh, actually, there's three we want to use further down the line for a different usage, it just makes it a little bit messy because how do you take those three out and what do you charge? If you've charged individually per image in the first place, you're like, well, that's easy. It's just that times three, if you see what I mean.
Thank you. And the last question we have for tonight is from Carmel. Or Carmel, I agree that social is tricky one, as basically it is the same as advertising these days, but people don't want to pay advertising rates, especially for smaller brands. Do you qualify social media as advertising?
So this was my point earlier about understanding if a usage is social or paid social, organic social, sorry, or paid social. If it's organic social, then it is just being posted by a brand. If it is paid social, that's advertising. So that's the difference there. So social media is advertising if it's paid advertising. But yeah, I mean, this is one of the tricky things. When I started in this industry, social media was like the smallest usage, and billboards was the biggest. And it has flipped in terms of how we see those images. If you put an image on Instagram, it's much more likely to be seen by loads more people than a billboard. However, the pricing has not really, it's not the usage, the way people charge usage has not really caught up with that. So unfortunately, the usage for social still is smaller. The payment, the fees for social is smaller. But yeah, that's the difference. If it's social media organic, then it's not advertising. If it is paid social, it is advertising.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah, again. And thank you, everyone, for joining tonight's Photo Tips talk. Just to say that our next Photo Tips talk is about celebrity photography and storytelling with Gabriel Hutchinson. It will be taking place on Thursday, the 13th of November, again, 6:30 to 7:30 London time.